thanks everybody for jumping on here. Should we go ahead and get started? You can start the introduction at least, and then people jump on, they can jump on. So my name is Cindy Barnes. I am the partnership manager for Edmond. I'm based in Northern California. I live in Sacramento. And today we are lucky to have Denise Douglas, who is the coordinator of educational technology at the Tulare Joint Union School District. She combines her passions of teaching, technology, and professional development, and she is the founder of the Tulare Joint Union High School District SAMR WISE program and has been a guest blogger for Ditch That Textbook. She has her master's degree in education and curriculum and instruction. She is leading edge certified as a professional learning leader, is a level 2 Google certified educator. She serves as a certified Pear Deck coach and has been actively involved in the CVQ board, having served as president and vice president. And this summer, she'll be joining the Q board in July, which congratulations, Denise.
Thank you.
And is presented at Fall Q, Spring Q, California League of Schools Technology Conference, Q Rockstar Camps, and CVQ events. And so you all know she's also today for her school district done, you said 6 sessions on blended learning. So let's be gentle with her poor voice. She's has a hot cup of tea so she can get through this one without having any. Do you have to do more tomorrow, Denise, for those blended learning?
No, tomorrow we get to stand out in 100-degree heat and collect Chromebooks.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, that's going to relieve your voice. But so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Denise. She prepared for a longer presentation than we have time, so I don't want to spend any time longer talking. And if you have any questions during this presentation, please type them into the chat box and we'll answer them as she goes through the presentation. All right. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Hi, everybody. I was telling Cindy, you know, I love tech, but transitioning to this distance model of presenting and stuff is a little different, and I just never realized how much I thrive on feedback, whether it be visual cues or you know, audible. So please feel free to interrupt, jump in, ask questions, because I hate to just talk and hear my voice. Normally my presentations are interactive. I usually use Pear Deck, but with only having 40 minutes, I'm just gonna go straight to the slides today. I do have my Twitter handle on the slides, Dougie Fresh Tech. There's a funny story about that. Find me on Twitter and I can tell you about it. I also have a bit.ly, and Cindy can share that in the chat as well. The bit.ly will take you to these slides, so if there's anything in there that you'd like to see afterwards, you're welcome to a copy of the slides. So I'm glad you're all here, and yes, as the coordinator of EdTech, distance learning has been on the forefront in our district, and I'm sure it's impacted all of you. And so today we're going to talk about the SAMR model and what are some engaging tools aligned to that model that we can use in distance learning. So we have a little agenda for today, just some introduction on what SAMR is, and then we'll be looking at each level of the SAMR model, and then hopefully there's some time for questions and answers. If we run out of time, again, find me on Twitter, and I would love to have a conversation there as well. This is where I miss my little interactive part, because I would normally start out asking how many of you are familiar with the SAMR model. So, so I'm going to ask you to unmute your mic or put it in the chat. How many of you know what the SAMR model is? No? Okay. So it looks like in the chat, nope, all right. We have a blank slate, great. So it is a model, it's a technology integration model. It was created by Dr. Ruben Quintadura. The name SAMR, if you didn't pick up on that, is an acronym coming from each level of the model: substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And it's a way of helping educators align their teaching and learning with technology. I started out as a tech coach 6 years ago, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I just had 20 years in the classroom experience, and I like technology, but as a tech coach, we like to say we were building the plane as we flew it. And I actually went to a fall Q session and went to a session on the SAMR model by a couple of educators from Coachella Valley who were really leading the way. And they had created this whole academy around the SAMR model. And when I was watching the presentation, for me, it clicked. And I went, oh my goodness, that's my job. That's what I need to do. And so I brought it back to my district and jumped in. We created our own SAMR Wise Academy. And we trained we trained over 300 teachers in the SAMR model in the 3 years leading up to going one-to-one. So it's a great model that we use it because it gives everyone a common language and vocabulary. And so we can talk about different types of technology and what impact they have on teaching and learning. Okay, so oftentimes with technology, the tools are focused down here at substitution and augmentation level, which isn't bad, but at that level, the technology is just enhancing the learning. What we want to try to do is aim for these higher levels of modification and redefinition, because again, at this higher level, the technology actually helps transform teaching and learning. Okay, but there's no bad levels. Like, it's not bad to do a substitution level activity. So there's a couple of different ways to look at the SAMR model. I happen to love coffee. I'm drinking my hot tea right now for my throat, but I gotta tell you, I have my Starbucks in the wings. So that'll happen after the session. So I love this analogy. If you make a cup of coffee at home, okay, but if you go to Starbucks and you just buy a regular cup of coffee, that's substitution. You've got a direct substitute with no functional change. But maybe instead I go to Starbucks and I get a latte. It's still pretty much coffee, right? So it's a direct substitute for my cup of coffee at home, but I've got some functional improvement. I've got espresso, and I've got that foamed milk on top. So it's still pretty much coffee, but there's some improvements there. Now, things really start to change when we get to the caramel macchiato. All of a sudden, our experience is somewhat different, and our coffee experience is now being transformed. So with technology, our tasks, we're getting significant redesign, and the technology is now transforming the learning. And then finally here, you know, the ultimate during fall, pumpkin spice, right? So now technology allows for the creation of completely new tasks. And I'm not a pumpkin spice fan, but from what I hear, you know, the pumpkin spice latte has transformed the coffee experience. So this is just a fun little representation for you. If you're a coffee person, it might help you remember. By the way, none of this is my information, and so I did attribute the creators on this. So this is by Nadine Gilkinson on Twitter also. She's pretty amazing. I also liked this model, and this shows you where SAMR is more like a swimming pool. Some people have depicted SAMR as a ladder, like, oh, we start at substitution and then we work our way up, augmentation, modification, redefinition. And when teaching about SAMR, that's usually how I teach about it. But in the real world, SAMR is much more like this swimming pool, meaning sometimes you're in the baby pool and sometimes you jump off the high dive next. So you don't necessarily have to go from the baby pool to the shallow end, to the deep end, and to the high dive. You can kind of move around at the different levels. And so this is just another great analogy. What I like about this, it also kind of explains the rules. So substitution and augmentation are very teacher driven. The teacher's in charge, right? You're kind of calling the shots. But once you get to the deep end of the pool and the high dive, oftentimes the role of the teacher has changed, and now the teacher is going to be really on the side of the pool. I talk to my teachers about how, you know, any of them that coach swimming or diving, right? Where does a coach stand? On the pool deck. You're not in the pool with the kids. So a lot of times I had teachers who were like, well, I don't know how to create a video. It's okay. You're not creating it. Your students are, right? And so let your students kind of jump in and do that deep in, or try the high dive. Let them try things that you don't know how to do. That's okay. A lot of times they'll teach you. So I thought both of these were just a great visual representation to kind of help you understand the different levels of SAMR. Luckily, there's not going to be a test today, so you don't have to memorize them right away, but you can refer back to these as a resource if you're like, wait, I'm not sure, what was modification? I'm not going to play this video right now, but it's a fun little Powtoon that also goes through and explains each level and gives some examples. It's a few years old, but it still does a really good job of introducing the topic. So that's going to be in the slides for you if you want to watch it later at your leisure. So let's jump in. We're going to talk about substitution. The description of substitution is tech acts as a direct tool substitute with no functional change. And so a really good example is even, you know, our cell phone. Our cell phone is a direct tool substitute, right? I don't own a flashlight anymore. I have my cell phone. I don't have maps in my car. I have my cell phone. You know, so it's a direct substitute. In technology, probably the easiest example is like a Google Doc, okay? Instead of handwriting all of our notes, we could do a Google Doc or a Word document. My district is a Google district, so when I say things like Google Docs, please realize a Word doc is absolutely fine. Any kind of word processing is going to be at the substitution level, okay? Or watching a video on YouTube. I was in the classroom quite a while, and you know, I used to like go get the TV and bring it in and play the video, or even the big laser disc, right? Well, now we have YouTube. It's just a straight substitute. There's really no functional change. Most of us are at the substitution level without even thinking about it. Some of the things that you want to consider is don't use technology just to say you use technology. Make sure you know why. Why am I using it? You know, why am I going to use word process notes instead of handwriting notes? You know, I have a 20-year-old son. His handwriting is terrible. It is much easier for him to type a paper on a Google Doc than to write it by hand. You're going to get a lot more out of him. It's going to be done much quicker. You're going to be able to read it. And so that's kind of the benefit of using that platform. Substitution does tend to be pretty teacher-centered, meaning the teacher saying, okay, I want you to, you know, write a 5-paragraph essay. Here's a Google Doc. You know, turn it in when you're done. Share it with me, etc. Or watch this YouTube video. So that's substitution. Again, this is kind of where most of us start. It's not bad to be at this level, but we don't want to live there because technology opens up so many other doors. All right, I don't know if now's a good time for any questions or if I should keep on.
Right. I don't see any questions in the box.
All right, so let's jump to augmentation. Now, augmentation is very aligned to substitution. There's not a huge difference. As you can see, the definition is almost exactly the same. In augmentation, technology is still a direct tool substitute, but now we do have functional improvement. Now there are some greater benefits to using it. So for example, in Google Docs, one of the great features of that is so much better than just a word processor is the collaboration feature, right? I can share my Google Doc with you and we can both be on the doc at the same time. Or I can ask you to edit my Google Doc. I don't have to print it and hand it to you and have you write on it and then me retype it, right? We can work on it together. We can collaborate. Okay, so collaboration is key. Some of the other great things about augmentation besides collaboration, is being able to get feedback. So I mentioned Pear Deck. The reason why I like using it is because it gives me that feedback that I'm so used to having, you know, when I teach or when I present. Also, super easy way to check for understanding. When you are teaching a lesson to your students, you want to see, are they understanding this? How can I do a quick formative assessment? And so all of these little icons are actually linked. I'm going to click back because my computer is being a little slow today. So here, let me just show you. So here, this is just to take you to training on Google Docs. And this takes you to the Pear Deck website so you can learn about it. Nearpod is another interactive presentation tool. It's very similar to Pear Deck. Pear Deck has a really great integration with Google Slides, where Nearpod is really known for their content library. Okay, so if you're looking for content, if you're looking for pre-made presentations, I highly recommend Nearpod. They also have some features that are a little more interactive. They've got some games that you can create quite easily in Nearpod, and they have a collaboration board. So it's another fabulous tool that I love, has been really helpful with distance learning. Something as simple as Google Forms is another way to check for understanding. You know, 3 years ago, I told teachers, don't use Google Forms. They're not made for quizzes. Don't use it for a quiz. You know, use it for a survey or that kind of stuff, but not for a quiz. You know, it's just too difficult. How times have changed. Now Google Forms are a great way to do a quick quiz. If you use Google Classroom, it's integrated right there in Google Classroom. You can actually lock students into that form, that quiz, so that if they exit it early, you get a notification and it tells them, hey, you need to stay and finish this. And then Edpuzzle. I see someone in the chat box mention Edpuzzle as well. Edpuzzle has been fabulous for distance learning. What Edpuzzle lets you do is take a video. It could be a YouTube video, Khan Academy, other videos, like we have Discovery Streaming, so you could put your Discovery Streaming videos in there. And it lets you take videos and make them interactive. And so you can very quickly and easily add multiple choice questions, open-ended questions. You can put in a hard stop. And what I love is it holds students accountable. They can't just like skip ahead to the questions. You can actually put a setting in where they have to watch the video, and then they have to answer the question. They receive feedback, and only then can they move on to the next segment of the video. So you can see all of these tools are giving us that functional improvement, and that's what makes them augmentation. Now, I believe they are all pretty teacher-driven as well, because the teacher is creating the lessons. And while students can do these lessons asynchronously with distance learning, you know, Pear Deck and Nearpod have self-paced lesson modes. It's still based on what the teacher is, you know, kind of setting forth. I want you to go here, and then here, and then here. So I see a question about Edpuzzle. Is it embedded or linked out? The video is embedded into Edpuzzle, if that's what you are asking. If not, please feel free to clarify. Okay. And I didn't provide examples of these, but at the end, if we have time, and if you're interested, I can show you examples. Instead, I thought it would be better just to give you links to the site so you can check them out. Right now, Pear Deck, Nearpod, and Edpuzzle are offering free premium access during the school closures. So it's a great time to look into that. So some other examples for formative assessment. These are more gamified. So oftentimes when students do these, they don't even realize that you're assessing them, right? Because it feels like, hey, we're just playing a game. So things like Kahoot, quizzes, and Quizlet are great ways to check for understanding in a more gamified approach. My boss, she's an assistant superintendent, she gives a great analogy about formative assessment. She said, it's always better to do a biopsy than an autopsy. So that's why formative assessment is so important, because we need to check for understanding to see how our students are doing. And it's so much better to do that in the lesson rather than waiting until the end of the lesson, or we get to the chapter test or the unit test and then sit there and go, oh, wow, yeah, no, they totally didn't get that. Okay. And so I don't know if any of you have any experience with these. I did link them here for you as well. And so all of these are great features. Quizlet is kind of flashcard based, but Kahoot has made some changes. Kahoot is typically more of a synchronous platform, like whole class mode where students are competing against each other, but they do have a distance learning mode now where students can just challenge each other. And then quizzes came after Kahoot. It's very much like Kahoot, but what I like about quizzes is that you can, so in Kahoot, you get points for being correct, but also for being fast. And sometimes students need to process and they need to think. And our English learners need a little more processing time. Our SPED students need more processing time. And so I like quizzes because students get points just for being correct, not for being fast. So you can change that setting. Okay. So that's a lot of options for you under augmentation. What I have found is that most teachers live in substitution and augmentation about 80% of the time. Okay. And so again, that's not a bad place to be. That's kind of our natural go-to. It's very teacher-centered. The teacher has structured everything. You know, we're giving our content. We're checking for understanding. And so in those two levels of substitution and augmentation, the technology is enhancing the learning. Okay. And I see some chat in there about Edpuzzle and YouTube. There is a YouTube integration. So depending on the videos that you pick and whether or not there's ads embedded, but I have to tell you, Edpuzzle has a ton of great content just in the Edpuzzle platform that doesn't have ads. The other thing is Edpuzzle has a connection now with Screencastify. So if you make your own videos, and then you can put them directly into, you make your video in Screencastify and then you put it into Edpuzzle. So if you have a concern about the ads, there's definite ways to go around it so that your students are not seeing ads. Okay, because the ads are not from Edpuzzle. The ads are from the video makers. All right, so that is substitution and augmentation. So I'm really hoping you guys will open up your mics or put information in the chat box, because I see some of you have talked about your experience with these tools, and if you're using them in distance learning, or if you have questions about how any of them work or the benefits of them. Wait time as a teacher is always so difficult, and I tell you, wait time over Zoom feels like so much more awkward for me. All right, well, I don't see any additional questions. Yeah, screencast of Edpuzzle, it is awesome. Again, as Cindy mentioned, that I've been training teachers the last 2 days on distance learning, and we've been talking a lot about that. For assessments, these are kind of the gamified ones. I think between Google Forms and these three, I mean, there's other things like Socrative. There's another company called GoFormative. So, I mean, there's Gym Kit, there's a ton out there. I always think it's best to kind of start with one or two and get yourself comfortable with that tool, and then get your students comfortable with that tool before adding on another. I think distance learning is pretty overwhelming in general. And so I hate to overwhelm teachers and students with like a bunch of new things. During the last 10 weeks since we have had the school closure, I haven't actually introduced any new tools to my teachers because we have a lot of tools that we've already been using, and it's like, hey, let's focus on that. So, yeah, Go Formative is amazing. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Again, we're going to have questions and answers at the end, or don't forget, if any of you are on Twitter, my Twitter handle's down here at the bottom, and would love to continue this conversation there as well. So, I think our goal with technology, at least my goal as a tech coordinator, is that I want the technology to transform learning. You know, my school district has invested millions of dollars to go one-to-one. So we're a high school only district. We have Chromebooks. We are one-to-one take-home, meaning every student gets a Chromebook their freshman year, and they take it home, and then we don't see it again until their senior year, where hopefully they keep it. And we just check it out to them, and they're able to walk away with it. That is kind of our goal. And we invested a lot of time and money in going one-to-one, and I would hate for that investment just to be used for students to type essays and fill in digital worksheets, okay, which is substitution level. Again, those aren't bad, but we're investing in our students to go beyond that, right? We want the technology to transform learning, not just enhance it. And so when we cross this line from augmentation to modification, that's where that transformation occurs. And so I, encourage my teachers to have students do a higher level SAMR task at least once a semester. I would prefer once every 6 to 9 weeks. But when we talk, you're going to see, that it takes a little bit more time when we get in these higher levels. So what are they? Well, first of all, we need some criteria. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is total arbitrary criteria that I made up. But I made it up after working with hundreds of teachers doing the SAMR model and talking about technology integration. And so when we're talking about what are the criteria to cross that line, to get us from augmentation to modification? So the first one to me is the non-negotiable. Students are now going to be creators, not consumers. Okay? So if students are not creating, I'm going to argue with you that you're not at the modification level. Okay? And I highlighted the word students because the big switch when you cross that line is the role of the teacher and the role of the student. Okay, so now students are going to be creating. The other 3 criteria don't all have to be present, but this is kind of what helps us determine, wow, is this technology transforming the learning? So when students are using the technology, is there an authentic purpose? Why are they creating that? What's the purpose of it? And is there an authentic audience? If students are creating something so the teacher can give it a grade and that's it, then I would say it's probably not going to be at the modification level of the SAMR model. Okay, so there needs to be a purpose beyond getting a grade, and there needs to be an audience beyond the teacher. And then the last one is totally voluntary, but oftentimes when we're at those higher levels, particularly at redefinition, there's going to be app smashing, meaning students are going to use more than one tool. So again, I made these criteria up. This is kind of how it fits in my head when I was describing to teachers, because they would say, well, is this lesson augmentation or modification? And we would chat about it. And so by coming up with this criteria, it really helped us kind of define and figure out, oh, what level of the SAMR model is it? So let's see. And now I have some examples for you. So modification, the explanation, the definition is tech allows for significant task redesign. That's how we get that transformation. Normally, I would tell teachers, like, let's not use Google Slides for modification. Not because it doesn't meet the criteria, but because kids have been doing PowerPoints and slides now since like first grade. And I really wanted the teachers and students to go above and beyond. But I have to tell you, there's some amazing things that can be done with Google Slides that meet that criteria. Remember, are students creating? Is there an authentic audience? Is there an authentic purpose? So I wanted to show off one of my friend, Ryan O'Donnell, has created amazing templates in Google Slides. Okay, so here we have Time Magazine, but it's totally editable in Google Slides. So can you imagine if you're doing a book study, or if you're having students report on a person, right, or a certain era of history, have them instead create a magazine here in Google Slides. It's super simple. They can add copyright-friendly pictures. They put their own text in. They describe it. And then when we hit present, we have a digital magazine. You can embed video. Okay. And the other cool thing in Google Slides, you can actually go file and, oops, I don't want print, but you can save it as a PDF and then make like an ebook. So in my slide notes, there's a list of links for his templates. That was just one small one. I see in the chat, ditch that textbook, yes, tons more templates. And there's even Slides Mania is also sharing templates like Ryan O'Donnell's, and then they just have some great design templates there as well. So you can use Google Slides, but I try to encourage teachers to kind of go beyond that. Another great example of modification, by the way, I wanted to mention, choose tools with a low floor and a high ceiling. A low floor meaning super easy to use, a high ceiling meaning you can go really far with it. And so I had a Spanish teacher who had been teaching a lesson to his students about a certain verb conjugation. And so once the students learned how to conjugate the verbs, then they wrote a poem. And I don't know enough about Spanish, or I don't remember enough about my Spanish lessons to remember which verb conjugation it was. But basically, the teacher, taught the lesson, taught about the verb conjugation. Students wrote their poems in Spanish. And then I came in and helped the teacher, and I said, you know what? Let's have them publish their poems using Canva. And so they went on Canva, and they were able to choose pictures and the font and all of that good stuff. And then we saved it as a JPEG, and then we put those pictures in Google Slides. And I told the teacher, your kids are gonna love this. And they did. And the greatest thing is when we got done, you could see kids taking out their cell phones and taking pictures of their computer screen and then sharing it on social media. And to me, that's when you know you have a win, right? When kids are so excited about what they're doing in class that they want to share it with others, technology is transforming the learning. A couple of other options, Adobe Spark. I'm just going to show you a quick little, this is a Portuguese class, and normally they would do a recipe. Well, we turned it into an Adobe Spark video. Oops.
Os ingredientes são copo de farinha, 6 ovos, saquinho de fermento, copo de açúcar, 2 colheres de sopa.
So again, Adobe Spark, super low floor, very easy to do. It's really like creating Google Slides, But what I love about it is that students can add their voice. And now all of a sudden, it just comes to life. And the students are practicing their language skills, which is great. If you're learning Portuguese, it's also great if you're an English learner, right? Trying to practice your English in your social studies class or your math class. So with modification, anytime you can get students talking and getting their voice, I love it. It's a win. Wakelet is another great tool. These are not my examples. I hit the Twitters up and got a great example of student work. So this teacher created a Wakelet. Here's the directions for the students. And then what students did is they created their resume and their portfolio on a Wakelet. So they're able to make it multimedia. Okay, they've got their resume, and they could add all sorts of, so here's her Wakelet with her digital portfolio. So in Wakelet, you can put your work in it. So if you're a Google district, you can put your Google Drive slides and docs and that kind of stuff in there. You can, so here's her digital portfolio, her music, her graphics. These are all things that she has created. I would say technology has just transformed the learning, right? And what a great way for this student to market herself. So again, Wakelet, super low floor, great high ceiling, and it's free. So that's modification, right? Students are creating, not consuming. They're using their voice. There's an audience anytime they're out sharing it, either with their classmates, other classes, on social media. We're at modification. Last but not least is redefinition. Again, very similar to modification, except now these new tasks previously inconceivable. Okay, so this is great for project-based learning. Again, we want that authentic audience, so things like student-created podcasts and then marketing those podcasts. Students making their explainer videos with Explain Everything. So Explain Everything is a great tool that has an interactive whiteboard. And so students can literally, you know, I'm thinking of math. They can solve a math problem on the whiteboard, but they can also record their voice and explain their thinking. And like, why are they doing that step next? Which, you know, is something we could never figure out on pencil and paper. You know, math teachers have for decades have said, show your work, show your work. Yeah, but like, explain to me the steps you took. Technology allows that. So these are two great redefinition tools, as well as Google Sites and WeVideos. So we saw a portfolio on Wakelet. You could do the same thing with Google Sites. This example happens to be a student-created Google site in regards to Puerto Rico. It's from a U.S. history class. Shoot, it's a world history. But they've embedded video. They have written up their descriptions. They've got some primary source documents, and all of that is put in on a Google site. And then last but not least, I put WeVideo because, again, we're a Chromebook district, and WeVideo is Chrome compatible. It's very similar to iMovie. I don't know if you see what they did there. But this is an older example when we first started the SAMR program and we had some iPads. But I have to tell you, this video was from a class. It's an alternative ed class. It's for students with emotional and behavioral issues. And they would create their own children's book. So after they created the book, then the teacher worked and helped the students, and the students then created a book trailer, which is a video of their book. And so here's their book coming to life. So we're running out of time. I'm going to cut it short. But they have to summarize their story. They're showing off their illustrations. And I have to tell you, that came from a student who normally wouldn't even talk to anyone at all. But yet here they were able to create a children's story and put it together in a book trailer video and then share it, not only with their family, but with other students. There's a plethora of tools out there. And again, this is Mr. Oris Tech. He's on Twitter. And he put together this matrix. Again, we could chat and talk about, is Edpuzzle redefinition, is Pear Deck redefinition? I don't know. But I think it would be fun. If you click on this, it'll take you to a Google Drawing, which has all of these are hyperlinked. So got nothing to do this summer? Check out this matrix, right? I saw someone mention Flipgrid, it's up there. All sorts of fun little things. They're all hyperlinked, so you can learn more and more about all of these products. Distance learning, again, has been a challenge, but I think if we keep the SAMR model in mind, it will really help us kind of navigate and think about the tools that we use. So I'm seeing questions about the slides. Yes, you get these slides. There's a bit.ly, so I'm going to go back to I
added that too here. It's at the top of the chat.
Thank you.
I'll put it back down at the bottom.
They might not see it. So there's a bit.ly down here on the bottom left-hand corner. Let me move my Zoom bars covering it up.
I just put it in the chat as well.
Thank you. Yeah, my cursor's covering it up, but it's a bit.ly SAMR, all uppercase, and then distance. Bit.lys are case sensitive, and you'll have these slides. The only thing that aren't on the slides are some of the student work, just because I wanted to respect their privacy, and they didn't post it on social media, so I didn't want to put it out there on social media for them. But I have 2 minutes left. So questions. Cindy, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Thank you so much. What an awesome presentation. I also loved your analogies. I love the swimming pool and the Starbucks. So thank you so much, Denise, for sharing your knowledge. I put into the chat box as well a link for the next session. So you can, if you don't have that link handy, you can quickly link into the next session. And so if there's no questions, we'll close this out. You'll get the recording of this. Along with the bit.ly will be included in a follow-up. And don't forget to stay because we're doing prizes at the end of the conference today. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Denise. I really, truly appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was awesome.
It was fast and furious, but
it was so good. You did a great job.